Welcome to a new episode of Data Unlocked, our guide to data mastery. So, on today's episode, we'll explore the power of data visualization, which is an important skill that allows us to turn complex information, complex data sets into impactful visuals, into maps, into infographics, into visual reports, and so on. So, for vocational education and training educators and teachers, mastering data visualization is not just about presenting information. It's more about fostering critical thinking, it's about improving our decision making process, and it's about driving students' engagement. So, I won't be exploring this interesting aspect of data literacy alone. Joining me today, we have Jacopo Ottaviani, Senior Strategist at Code for Africa and mentor on crisis reporting. So, Jacopo is an expert in data visualization, data literacy, design, with an extensive experience in global projects. So, as a computer scientist and a data journalist, Jacopo has supported professionals worldwide in learning how to leverage data in their programs. We are thrilled to have him here today, and let's start this journey together. Thank you very much, Jacopo, for being here today. It's a great pleasure to have you. To start with, my first question for you is, can you please explain what is data visualization for you and why it's so crucial in today's world that's a data-driven world, and why is it crucial also for VET educators, so for vocational and education trainings?
So thanks for having me here, and it's a pleasure to share my experience about data visualization with everyone. So data visualization is particularly important because it helps democratize access to data. Imagine having tons of spreadsheets, Excel files, PDF files with a lot of data hidden somewhere, and you want to make them public, you want to make them accessible. Data visualization will come in handy for this reason, for this purpose. So it's much easier for anyone to understand a data set when there is a visual device or a visualization in place, rather than reading the numbers directly. It's particularly important for VET because any job these days can leverage data. And I believe that it's something that any citizen should be able to manage and to use for their daily lives and for their professional lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So, your work at Code for Africa has really allowed you to explore the world, to meet professionals from diverse communities, different background, different educational background as well. And it has also allowed you to see the difference in how people from VET training programs and how people from maybe other type of curriculum, how they handle data normally. How have you seen different professionals communicate through different data? And what lessons do you think that VET educators could learn from this experience?
Data visualization is a team effort. So normally you have multiple backgrounds in the mix. You have people with a design background, for example, people with maybe a storytelling background, people with more like a statistical background. And usually by combining these different skills, you get the message out and you get it tailored for your own audience. So data visualization can be done in many different ways and formats according to the audience that you're targeting. And VET educators should keep in mind that a visualization will be more effective if it's adapted to the audience. So the first question should be, am I visualizing the data for who? Like what's the person or the group of people I'm targeting with my visualizations? And on the basis of that, they tailor a visualization in the right format, on the right platform, using the right level of complexity. So the same data set can be visualized in many different ways. It can be visualized with a simple line chart or a bar chart that can be understood by anyone. or it can be mapped in a in a geographic map on different levels of zoom. It can be plotted on a scatter plot, which is usually like a multi-dimensional visualization that is more complex. So these are just examples, right? And each example is great for a certain type of audience. I think we should leverage the design thinking approach and adapt our visualizations to the audience. And first, we need to ask ourselves, who's our audience? Like, who are we
Exactly.
targeting? And sometimes I see people don't really ask themselves this question. They just start visualizing the data, with a mixed set of results. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on like how you match your design and your visualization with your audience.
I think that you just mentioned an important point. So, knowing the audience and knowing how to target that kind of audience, because you just mentioned a few examples on how you can visualize data, but there are much more out there. And as educators, sometimes you have I would say, a difficult role of choosing which ones also you should try to teach your students, because in VET training programs, it's not like you have just a classroom with people that have the same focus or are aiming at the same, I don't know, professional roles. You have a variety of professional figures that are like in training within the same classroom. Which elements should teachers try to keep put into account when they are trying to decide also which ones they should focus on?
I would start from a very generic and broad introduction to data literacy.
Mhm.
Let students understand that behind data, very often there are human stories. So this would trigger an interest in the students. If you read the statistics of ISTAT, you're going to read a lot about the economy or the demographics of Italy, for example. That sounds very abstract. So I think number one, we should go to the students, in particular in this case, VET students, and tell them that whenever we deal with data, we're dealing with people. So behind an Excel file, you have households, or you have families, you have communities. So I believe that that's the number one uh, notion that you want to transmit and share with your students. But then obviously, there are some broad techniques that can be applied to any field. I can think of like the basics of information design. I think we also want the people to grasp the basic concepts of statistics, like what's an average, what's a deviation, what's a variance. These simple concepts are very important. How do you calculate a percentage? It's so important because a lot of the visualizations will touch on these kind of statistical methods and indicators. Then I think to make it more fun, uh, elements of information design. How do you pick the colors? How do you ensure that the visualizations is understandable by your audience? That could be another module. And then you can have another module on storytelling, like how do you tell a story with data. So for example, you have an Excel file, you want to find a story in it. What would you do? You need to start digging into the Excel file and then visualize it in a way that your story will be told. So there would be an element of journalism or storytelling, if you like. So again, you see, it's a multidisciplinary field. It's super important to touch on all these components. And then maybe the students can work in groups. So you can ask the students to, each person will play a different role. You're going to have like designer, you're going to have a journalist, and you're going to have a data researcher or data scientist or statistician. The three of them will join forces in your classroom, and the final output of the exercise will be a story. Each student will have a different set of interests, but data can capture any phenomenon. So maybe data research is also another module. Yeah.
Another element important when we are thinking about the lesson we want to put out there and also the students we have is trying to understand as educators how to have the high level of engagement. So how to keep our students engaged in our lessons, which strategies we can use, especially because um, interpreting data can be interesting, but it can also be extremely boring. So, nothing against the analysts that are listening to us, but we know that it's not the easiest things, especially going from numbers to trying to understand the complex phenomenon that are around those numbers. So my question is, which strategies do you think that VET teachers should use to adapt and to improve like their way of keeping their students highly engaged? And also, how can they foster critical thinking linked to data analysis?
Okay, I think that's a very key question, because if you take a statistics manual and you give it to the students will probably run away from you. They're gonna fall asleep or just run away. So I think the easiest way for me to make it attractive and engaging is to make it concrete and tangible. So I mentioned before, stress that behind the numbers there are tangible phenomena or people. So I think asking the students to act like data researchers and do their interviews, maybe even do the data collection. They can go around and collect data from their families or from the neighbors, their parents, or relatives, friends. Like, do a little like data investigation in their circles, put the data into a spreadsheet, then try to visualize it using one of the user friendly tools that we're going to talk about in a minute. I think if you make it very concrete, and you let them interview other people, collect the data, take ownership of the whole process, I think you're going to get good results. And the visualization part is actually, a key step of the data-driven storytelling process, which I think should be how we frame the whole experience. So data visualization is quite fun because it will involve the use of design tools that have colors, visuals, maps. So it's stuff that your students will like, because it's not a boring Excel file, but it's something visual. It's something sometimes even interactive, where people can click around and explore the data themselves. So I think by doing it, naturally speaking, if you turn it into a real life experience, the students will have more fun and will be more engaged.
Listening to you, I wanted to like go a step back, going back to your experience with Code for Africa, because you were mentioning how you can use the information not only to tell your students that behind the numbers you have people, you have stories, you have communities, there's a lot going around, but also as a way to decide what kind of image or what kind of story they can tell about their communities as the people that are uh, visualizing the data, visualizing the information. And I think this is interesting when we're thinking about the role of using data visualization to bridge the information gap. Because
Mhm.
we know that there are tons of research out there that give us all the information, all the numbers we need about everything that's going on in our society. So, social, economic, political, statistics about everything. But obviously, as we keep them in the standard visualization form, so in our spreadsheet, we limit them to a restricted audience. So there's just a few, I don't want to say a few people that are able to fully understand what they mean, but there are a few people that are willing to analyze spreadsheets and to see what they have to communicate. And also in that case, deciding what we want the numbers to communicate depends on us that are looking at the spreadsheets. So I would like to ask you, like, from your experience with Code for Africa, seeing different communities and different ways of interacting with data across the world, what role do you think data visualization can play in bridging the information gap that exists, and how can it support efficient reporting? So, project reporting, reporting from the community, business reporting, so any kind of reporting. So, how can it bridge the information gap and support reporting?
That's a very good question. So I think visualization can help you understand where the data is and where also the data is not. So, for example, I can think of an example of a project I worked on when Code for Africa tried to map an informal settlement in Lagos, Nigeria. And if you open Google Maps, there was a blank spot. The place is called Makoko, is in Lagos near Yaba, and there are hundreds of thousands of people living there. But yet, if you open the Google Maps, maybe 5 years ago, you wouldn't find anything. It was like a blank spot on the map. So that's a data visualization made by Google Maps, which tells you a lot about what's going on. So there is an entire community that is unmapped. We can visualize it. Then we can also go there and collect the data and create the map and add it on OpenStreetMaps, Google Maps, which is what the project did in the end. So we had like before and after. It was like before was completely empty. Afterwards, it was completely mapped. By appearing on the map, the people could actually state their own existence. So they could actually tell the rest of the world that they exist. Because anyone from anywhere could go on Google Map and see the actual polygons of their houses, which weren't there before. That's just an example. So I think visualization can definitely be a tool for data advocacy. So you're basically advocating for more data and also less biased data or more just data, um, more comprehensive data. And this is really important when you're working with communities who are underrepresented in the world of media or in the world of the internet. They are less known and less covered by the newsrooms across the world, for example. Data can be super useful to amplify any message. So if you're working on a report, you're working on a campaign, if you're working on advertisement, or you're just sharing knowledge with somebody, you can visualize data and make it more accessible, more engaging. uh, Imagine having like a report, right? You're writing a project report for your boss or for your customer, for your funder. One thing is that you write down everything in text. It can be quite boring and hard to understand. But what if you take some of the most important numbers and you visualize them? You share the key highlights and you do it in a visual way with colors, with maps, with charts. That will definitely amplify the impact of your communication. So I'm a strong advocate for data visualization in any sort of communication or exchange of documents, exchange of information.
Yeah, I was thinking that I'm also a strong advocate of data visualization because while you were talking, I was thinking about my university days and when I had to write my thesis and we had like the minimum number of pages, and I decided to do a not boring to me, but it can be boring for some people, a boring analysis on how certain communities participate in the job market, in the labor market. So the factors influencing that, where they are located, how. So I had all these huge data set from ISTAT, so the National Institute for Statistics. I deleted after graduating because it was
Yeah,
like my nightmare.
yeah,
And I remember that using like charts and tables that really helped me put some of those information in a clear way, because then when you're discussing the thesis, and I prepared like 2 pages
Yeah.
abstract with a few charts, and that was useful for me because I used it just to trace the old research and months of nightmare with those super difficult programs. So I think that's also it's an interesting point, not only for the students in our VET programs, but also for the educators, because sometimes you have new ideas, you have new things you would like to present to the headmaster, to anyone, or even participating in European projects. And you need some indicators that will help you understand how the experience is going, if it's a good one, if it's a bad one. But then you cannot just expect the stakeholder, the person you are speaking with, to go through the whole information. Maybe you have 5 minutes for the meeting, maybe you have 10 minutes, and you can't go there with 100 pages. So that's
Yeah.
like something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So if you want to make sure that somebody want knows more about the data you have, I think you must visualize it. You can't just share the numbers unless they are like researchers. In that case, they may want to see the Excel files and the actual tables. But if not, then they would prefer to to see a chart or a visualization. This is very good also for students who want to write their how you call them, like research essays, or
Mhm.
some kind of experiments with data. Instead of just writing the numbers, why don't you make a line chart and a bar chart? I think the public will the public, I mean, as in the audience, it could be the other classmates, or could be professors, whoever is going to read what you're producing will be mind blown, rather than just bored by the numbers. I want to add one thing on the importance of this. So I think it's particularly important to stress that data can be manipulated. So data is not truth. If anyone sees a visualization on the TV, or on a billboard, or on a piece of paper, they always need to kind of question the solidity and the accuracy and the neutrality of the data. So they need to kind of make sure that people are not just absorbing the data as is, but they need to have a critical eye. And I think this is something that can be um, strengthened with students through exercises. So it could be
Yeah.
something around data fact checking. So how do you recognize a fake chart, or a distorted chart, or something that is not accurate? I think these are skills that are increasingly important in our societies, right? Because data can be also used for propaganda, can be used for a lot of different things. Data is like an image or video; it can be manipulated by any player.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because, like, you were providing examples from the political space, but it's also important in business and in other professional fields. Like, if you want to sign a new contract and you want to do it based on the information they share with you, and you see the data, everything looks perfect. But if you don't have the critical ability to analyze the information you're seeing in front of you, you might end up making decisions that are not the best ones for your organization, and that can lead to critical situations. So this is absolutely an extremely important skill to have. And thinking about this, Jacopo, my question for you is linked to the fact that sometimes we have this idea that everything is extremely expensive. Some programs can be extremely expensive. Could you please suggest a few online versions, free versions for data visualization that VET teachers can use, and they can like get started with those platforms?
99% of the time I use free tools myself, also with my partners or my collaborators. We try not to buy software unless it's strictly necessary. So I have a couple of examples of data visualization tools that can be used for free. One is called datawrapper.de. It's a German tool, so it was kind of made by Deutsche Welle, which is like the German public broadcaster. Um, and it's now available online for anyone who wants to use it. It's used by a lot of different players, including the United Nations, but also a lot of international media. And it's quite easy. It's quite easy to use. Another one is Flourish. So it's called flourish.studio. That's a tool that was originally funded by Google and now is kind of owned by Canva. Some professor, I'm sure, use Canva. Flourish is part of Canva now. It's a data visualization tool. It's slightly more complicated than Data Wrapper, I think, but it's very powerful and it's also for free. And then there is another one, which is a tool from Milan. It's also for free. It's an Italian tool for data visualization. I think this is among the examples is probably the most complicated one, but it's also extremely powerful. It's called Raw Graphs, RAW. It's made by the University Politecnico di Milano and now maintained by a design studio in Milan called Calibro. I think these three tools together can really cover a lot of what we need. All of them are code free. You don't have to code. There are no code tools. So there's no coding involved. It's mostly a user friendly interface where you load the data, clean the data, visualize it, and then publish. So it's easier to open it. You open one of them, try with Data Wrapper. You can actually log in, create a free account. You log in, you can use one of the sample datasets. You pick one of the sample datasets. There is one about CO2 emissions, for example, carbon emissions in the world over time. You pick that one, then you click on next. This table will show up on your screen. You see if it's being loaded correctly or not. Normally, yes, especially because this is a sample dataset, so it's going to be well loaded. You click on next, you're going to get into the visualization phase, and that's where the fun happens. So there you can pick the colors, you can pick the type of chart, you can change the axis of the visualization, you can change the title, the description, the source. So all the scaffolding around the chart can be customized in this phase. And once you're done there, you can have a preview of the chart. You see how it looks like on desktop computers, on mobile, on tablet. You can publish it, and then you can also print it. If you want to have it on PDF, you can print it as a static image. Obviously, if you print it, you lose the interactivity that you have if you publish it and embed it into your website. But that's fine. A lot of the charts work very well, even if they are static. Interactivity is a bit overrated these days.
It really doesn't take much time to learn how they work and to start experimenting, because they give you their data set to try when you're starting. But also, if you put your own information, it really guides you like step by step to obtaining the kind of visualization you want. So thank you very much for this. I think it's clear right now that data visualization is a tool that can be incorporated in different phases of our learning process as teachers and also as students. And it can help us convey important information. It can help us critically analyze the reality and the information we are given. And it's also a value add. It's an important skill, and it will become more and more important as we move forward and as we also join the labor market. So thank you once again. As I said before, I encourage everyone listening to us to try these tools really, and to use the tips for your classrooms as well. Jacopo, in some of the previous questions, he gave us a sort of lesson plan. Try to adapt it to your own reality and to your own students, and let's see what comes out from that process. You can also share them with us. We'll be happy to see how you incorporated the information into your own lesson planning techniques. So what else to say? Stay tuned for our next episodes where we'll explore more about other critical aspects of data literacy for vocational and education training educators. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Jacopo, for accepting our invitation. And until next time, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.